critics are urging federal regulators to use the full extent of their powers to ensure that banks aren't allowed to profit from their access to information. Our guest today, Saule Omarova, was asked to testify at the Senate Banking Committee on this issue. She is a law professor who teaches U.S. and international banking at the University of North Carolina. Saule, thank you so much for taking some time with us. We do appreciate it. Let me just ask you another basic question, and that is, what's the danger of allowing banks to trade on these commodities?
Well, there are various dangers, as you put it, of allowing banks to trade in physical commodities. After the recent crisis, we all know how much what banks do or don't do affects us all. So there is a concern, for example, about the risk that these banking institutions may be incurring by entering into fields that are so far away from their traditional competencies, like drilling for oil or trading oil or natural gas or electric power and so on and so forth. We never know what might happen, for example, in financial markets, should Morgan Stanley's oil tanker, for example, spray a major leak into a Gulf, for instance. So that's one concern, the safety and soundness of financial institutions. But there is also a larger concern about market power that these financial institutions accumulate by being able to control the flow of money and credit and finance on the one hand, but also the flow of essential raw materials and raw commodities that we all need for our everyday lives, because economic power translates not only into higher consumer prices, it also may translate into excessive political power that these institutions accumulate. So if there is next time a crisis and there is a possibility of a bailout, it might actually be much more difficult to let someone like JP Morgan fail, for example, if JP Morgan controls not only the flow of money, but also the flow of oil, gas, and electric power in this country.
And I want to bring Andrew back into this. You know, for the everyday average person, this is really about how much it costs to purchase the things that we need and use in our lives.
Well, that's exactly right. And I want to kind of ask, in this case, the banks are actually taking physical possession of the commodities, aren't they? They are, in essence, hoarding these commodities in warehouses?
Yes, they can, absolutely. They basically act just like regular commodity merchants have acted for centuries and centuries. They buy, sell, they produce, they refine. They do everything that all these commercial companies do.
So, Saule, what do you think changes or reform needs to be made in this system?
Well, that's $1 million question. First, I think the first necessary step is to figure out what exactly is going on, because we simply don't have enough information about what exactly these institutions do in the physical commodity sectors, how much they own, what activities they conduct. All of that is under the radar. And once we know what's going on, we have to see to what extent there is a danger of combining that presence in the physical commodity markets with their financial market presence, and to what extent we have to worry about perhaps breaking them up and maybe even, prohibiting certain activities, or at least monitoring and controlling for certain activities to a much greater degree than we do now.
And Saule, are all banks created equal in this? I understand that, for instance, with J.P. Morgan Chase and even with Goldman Sachs, that they ask the Federal Reserve to be considered as bank holding companies, which mean they sort of operate under different rules. Is that an accurate assessment? And what difference does that make?
Well, they're bank holding companies automatically if they own or control a U.S. bank. But I guess what you're referring to is that some of them, the biggest, the best capitalized and best managed, supposedly, can become so-called financial holding companies that can combine a wider variety of financial activities, investment banking activities, commercial banking activities, so on, with certain commercial activities like commodities trading. And of course, they're not all created equal. We have thousands of small banks in this country that do not dream of getting into this type of business. To be a serious global commodity merchant, you need a lot of capital. It's a very capital-intensive business. And you need the presence that only big institutions can have. And in that sense, it exacerbates that too-big-to-fail problem that we already have on our hands.
All right, Saule Omarova, thank you so much for your time and perspective. We do appreciate it. And of course, our own Andrew Schmertz, we appreciate your perspective as well. Thank you, sir. See you again later.